Can water store information? Preposterous. Or at least that was the reaction 30 years ago when the famous scientist Jacques Benveniste proposed that that was exactly the case and presented evidence as such. Why preposterous? Preposterous because we think of liquid water as consisting of huge numbers of water molecules randomly disposed relative to one another and bouncing around furiously a fantastic number of times each second. How possibly could that store information? Well, Jacques was practically crucified for coming forth with that idea. And, it turned into a kind of scientific joke. You're having some trouble remembering? Well, just drink some of Jacques Benveniste water because it contains memory. A scientific joke. Well, what actually do you need to store information? And I think the way to look at that is to think about a computer memory. For example, one of these thumb drives that I have here in my hand. What's inside? It consists of a linear or a planar array of elements, and the elements are actually transistors in this case. And each transistor can take on one of two states. We say 0 or 1 or on or off or whatever. And it's the distribution of these zeros and ones over this two-dimensional array that constitutes memory. And so the question we ask is, is there a kind of water that contains this kind of array of entities? And the answer is yes, there is, and that's easy water. So what's the structure of easy water? Well, it consists of arrays of oxygens and hydrogens, not only in one plane, but in stacked planes. So you have a three-dimensional array, not two-dimensional, three-dimensional array of ordered elements of oxygens and hydrogens. And it turns out that the oxygens have the capacity to have different states. And not only two different states, but actually 5 different states. -2 is the oxidation state that we mostly learn and know of, but there's also -1, 0, +1, and +2. So in theory, anyway, fourth phase has the capacity to store information. Well, that's theory, but now is there evidence to support that theory? Well, I mentioned the work of Jacques Benveniste, and by now Jacques' work has been confirmed by numerous laboratories. In fact, at our annual water conference, which takes place in Europe annually, we will often have presentations on the subject of water memory. And by now, Jacques Benveniste has become a hero because his work has been confirmed in so many laboratories. So by virtue of that, we're certainly of the opinion that water memory is actually real. And attracted to the subject of water memory is the famous Nobel laureate who passed in 2022, unfortunately, Luc Montagnier. And Luc found something really interesting, almost hard to believe even for those people who know of evidence for water memory. And that is, he found that you could take DNA and put it into a liquid buffer, reduce the concentration, and he said his evidence shows that the DNA, or the water surrounding the DNA, has the capacity to project information into a nearby flask of water. And the two, there's no way that the two could be communicating chemically. They're absolutely sealed. And yet, the evidence showed that the information, the sequence of the DNA, could be transferred to the water, and then using the PCR reaction, demonstrated that it could be copied. This has now been confirmed and published in 3 independent laboratories. So I must say that at our water conference each year, the audience expects 2 or 3 presentations on water memory, and there have been many presentations, and much of it has been published. So there is abundant information, evidence, and it is mounting. So why would this be important? Why should we pay attention to it? Well, I think one of the many reasons is that fourth phase water fills our body. It's mostly fourth phase easy water that exists inside. And I think many of you have had the experience about transferring of subtle information. So, for example, from me to the person who's sitting in the room, we communicate verbally, but we also communicate non-verbally. And many people are thinking that this non-verbal communication has to do with information that's projected from the water and received by the water. So this is one, you might say, practical application. Another one is remote healing. We know that in terms of ancient cultures, it used to be that there was a healer, and the healer could remotely heal people who were ailing. And this has become increasingly popular now, and the field of remote healing is one that is up and coming. It existed thousands of years ago, but we've forgotten about it, and now it's returning. And another application is, for example, putting information in that acts like an antibody. So we don't need necessarily to inject a vaccine or an antibiotic or whatever. A possibility that exists in the future is to take information and project the information onto our body and thereby achieve the kind of immunity. This is for the future. The applications simply boggle the mind as to what these possibilities are. And I would predict that this is going to be, in science, it's going to be a frontier topic. I think among some groups it already is, and it's increasing rapidly. So, thank you very much.